My name is Blátnaid Gallagher and you're with me here in East Galway, just outside the historic village of Aughrim. The farm here came to me through inheritance, so it would be in my mother's family, the Murrays, for over 300-400 years, as far as records actually go back. So we're farming about 100 acres, and then we have another 20 acres which is commonage that is being farmed for the National Parks and Wildlife Services. So in total it's about 120 acres, and some of it is leased out to my neighbour. Some of it has been planted and some of it is in what we call ancient merino meadows. And then we have our rare breed Galways, which is Ireland's native sheep breed. We run a social farm here also. So we've diversified into various different enterprises on the farm, but primarily we're an organic wool producer, and we also have the lamb from the heritage Irish Galway sheep. The Galway was always a very slow growing animal. The farmers were in no rush to push her on. They weren't under the pressure of the meat factories and you know, the grading systems that exist in meat production today. So they would have sold their sheep as they were being made ready for the butcher, when they were ready for the kill. And time was not an important factor back then. So if they needed the animal to grow into its second year, that was fine, let them grow into the second year. And we do that here on the farm as well. They're reared here in the pastures in East Galway, grass fed, and they actually have a very succulent meat. We don't push the lamb. We ensure that it grows and that the animal welfare and that the animals have, you know, a very good environment that they're being reared in. And that comes across when you taste a piece of Galway. You'll actually taste the marbling in the meat, and you'll taste the succulence that's there as well. And that's another product off the farm that we're very proud of. So currently we have a lamb producers group, which is where we're bringing all the producers of the heritage Irish lamb together so that we can sell as a group of producers. We're in the process of setting up that group, but we've already had the Galway in the Michelin star restaurant in Galway and in the famous Ballymaloe in County Cork. The market for the meat at the moment would be a specialised customer, and they want something very, very special in front of them. They want something that's rare and that's quite unique, and that's why Galway fits for that preparation. Well, I'd say that the farm was more organic than I'd actually realised it was. My uncle who farmed here before me was a man called PJ Murray, and PJ was very involved in what we'd call extensive agriculture. He didn't really push things on too far. In actual fact, I'd say he'd prefer if the tractor never came onto farms, because he was fond of animals and he was very fond of the horse and the cart, and he really liked the way farming was done back in the 40s and 50s. And it almost annoyed him to have to move forward and to have to progress, so he did as little as possible. And that meant that when Niall and I inherited the farm in 2017, regrettably, he had probably done a lot less than he should have, in the sense that we had a problem with noxious weeds. We had a problem with nettles and thistles and a bit of dock. But that's why the sheep came along. I spoke with a neighbour here and he said, you know, you have a problem on your hands there. If you want to continue the organic farm system that your uncle had, you know, you won't be able to spray all those weeds. And he said, the best thing you can do now, he said, is get yourself a flock of sheep. And that's why we opted for the native Irish breed. And indeed, if you look around, you'll see that the sheep have been good to us, and they've helped us, along with the topping machine, they've helped us to cut back. And I think at this point in time, we're in a lucky position to have a lot of those noxious weeds very much under control. The multi-species meadow is here because it's part of a programme that we're engaged with the National Parks and Wildlife Services. And they identified 2 plots on the farm which to them had a phenomenal diversification of plant species. And when you have that plant species diversification, that means that the pollinators in the area and the mammals in the area and the bird life in the area are all hugely benefiting from that diversification. So unlike a lot of the grassland that you'd see when you're driving around the countryside, which would be predominantly perennial ryegrasses, we didn't have to put a multi-species seed in here. Mother Nature had done that for Uncle PJ, and he hadn't changed it. So for years and years and years, he had an extensive grazing system on those 2 meadows, which meant that year after year after year, the seeds were falling and various different types of plants were coming in, sometimes to nurture one another. Sometimes these plant species can be feeding off each other. But right now we've up to 20 different plant species in both of those ancient merino meadows. We close them in around about March, and closing means that we don't allow any livestock to graze them. And then come August, usually around the 16th of August, we'll cut. And at that stage, we've had a huge amount of the plant species actually going through their full life cycle and getting to the most important part of the life cycle, which is the seed stage. So they're dropping their seeds onto the soil, and that means then that the following year, we have even more diversification and even more plants going through the meadows. At the moment, we have trees that were planted here by Mother Nature. We also have trees that were planted here by my Uncle PJ. And then we have about 13 hectares that Niall and I planted about 7 years ago. Part of the farm that's involved in a reforestation programme with the National Parks and Wildlife Service. You'll actually see what happens when land is left to do its own thing and how it actually naturally goes back to its own forest form. The ones that are here from Mother Nature are all native broadleaf species, but the ones that PJ would have put in, they're usually there for shelter belts. So he was a big believer in the fact that no field should ever exist with livestock in it without trees. And they use the trees in winter time as shelter from the elements, the wind and the rain. But most importantly, at this time of the year, a lot of the trees are actually used as shelter from the sun. So it keeps the animal cool and it keeps the animal healthy. And it's very important to us at all times that our animals are in peak condition. The other great attribute for the trees is that once the animals are happy and once they have adequate shade and once they have adequate shelter from the elements, it means that their immune system is also boosted, and that then decreases the amount of dependency that we would have on antihelmintics and the costs involved therewith. I would recommend organic farming and a rural lifestyle 1,000 times over. I've lived in cities, I've lived all over the world, but I've never been as happy. My heart has never been as joyful as it is when I get an opportunity to listen to that beautiful bird song and realise this is part of who I am right now. And organic farming can be profitable. A lot of people think that once they go into organic farming that they're going to have to reduce their profits. Not at all. In fact, it's the opposite. Once you enter into an organic farming process, you're automatically reducing your inputs. Now, if you reduce your inputs, that's going to have a huge effect on your bottom line at the end of the year. You also have healthier livestock. You yourself become an awful lot healthier. And I don't know, is there a price that you can actually put on one's health, especially one's mental health? When you're working in an organic farming system, you're working with your ears, you're working with your nose, and you're working with your eyes. So you're starting to use all senses. It's not just about, the margins. You're starting to envelop a whole lifestyle which you yourself are the beneficiary of. And I don't know how you can actually put a price on that. And yes, we do make margins. Yes, we are most definitely in a position where we can say the farm not only provides for both myself and my husband, but it also provides an income for me to be able to put back into the farm. This year alone, we have planted 500 metres of new fencing, which is there to protect the trees that we have on the farm. And the reason why we're protecting the trees, well, they actually protect the livestock. So it's a win-win for everybody. And yes, we are in a position to be able to have two incomes. Yes, we are in a position to reinvest. So organic farming does pay for itself.